The rain lashed against the windows of our Chicago apartment, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. For 18 years, Brynn and I had built a life, a home, a family. I'm Torin, 46, an IT specialist, and I thought I knew my wife. I thought we were happy. It started subtly. Brynn, always meticulous about her appearance, began spending extra time getting ready in the mornings. New clothes appeared in her closet, clothes that weren't exactly her style, more daring. She started going to networking events after work, events that conveniently always seemed to coincide with my late shifts. I work remotely, so my schedule is flexible, but I am often online until late at night. At first, I dismissed it. Brynn deserved to have a life outside of our marriage, right? I didn't want to be the controlling husband. But then came the phone calls. Whispered conversations in the hallway, always ending abruptly when I walked in. Texts that shed quickly delete, a guilty flush rising on her cheeks if I happened to glance at her screen. I started feeling like a stranger in my own home. The first real red flag was the weekend getaway. Brynn told me she was going to visit her sister, Isolde, in Milwaukee. Isolde had been going through a tough time, Brynn said, and needed her support. I encouraged her to go, even offering to take care of the kids, Leif and Astrid, so she could have some peace. Looking back, I feel like such a fool. 2 days after she left, Isolde called. "Torin, have you heard from Brynn?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "She was supposed to be here on Friday, but she never showed up. I thought she was with you." My blood ran cold. I stammered. She told me she was visiting you. She left on Friday morning." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Torin," Isolde finally said, her voice gentle, "Brynn hasn't been here in months. Is everything okay?" My mind raced. Where was she? Who was she with? The questions hammered against my skull, each one more terrifying than the last. I mumbled something about a misunderstanding and hung up, my hands shaking. I tried calling Brynn, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I texted her, demanding to know where she was, but received no response. Panic seized me, a cold, suffocating grip that squeezed the air from my lungs. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, pacing the apartment, desperately trying to come up with a rational explanation. Maybe she had car trouble. Maybe she decided to go somewhere else at the last minute and forgot to tell Isolde. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something was terribly wrong. That night, after the kids were asleep, I did something I am not proud of. I went through Brynn's phone. I know it was a violation of her privacy, but I was desperate. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Her phone was locked, of course, but I knew her password, our anniversary date. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the screen. Once I opened it, there was no going back. I took a deep breath and entered the code. The first thing I saw was a string of messages from a number I didn't recognize. The contact name was saved as Anders Project Lead. My heart sank. Anders was a name Brynn had mentioned a few times, a colleague she was working closely with on a new project. The messages were sickeningly sweet, filled with inside jokes and flirtatious banter. But it was the last few messages that made my stomach churn. "Can't wait for our weekend getaway," Anders had written. "Milwaukee is going to be amazing." Brynn had replied, "Me neither, just need to make sure Torin doesn't suspect anything." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The air rushed out of me, leaving me gasping for breath. My wife, the woman I had loved and trusted for 18 years, was having an affair, and she was using a fake story about visiting her sister as a cover. I scrolled through the rest of the messages, each one a fresh stab to the heart. They talked about their feelings for each other, their secret dates, their plans for the future. It was all there, laid out in black and white, a detailed account of their betrayal. I stumbled into the living room, collapsing onto the couch. The world seemed to spin around me, blurring the edges of reality. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, I couldn't feel anything but a crushing sense of betrayal and despair. How could she do this to me? How could she lie to my face, pretend to be someone she wasn't? Was our entire marriage a lie? Had she ever really loved me? The questions swirled in my head, each one more agonizing than the last. I spent the rest of the night in a haze of grief and anger, replaying the last few months in my mind, searching for clues I had missed, signs I had ignored. Brynn came home late Sunday night, acting as if nothing was wrong. "Hey, honey," she said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. "Had a great time with Isolde. She's doing much better now." I stared at her, my eyes burning with rage. How could she stand there and lie to me so casually? How could she pretend that everything was normal? I wanted to scream, to yell, to tear her apart with my bare hands, but I couldn't. I was too numb, too shocked, too heartbroken. I know, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Brynn frowned. Know what? I know about Anders, I said, my voice growing stronger. I know about Milwaukee. I know about everything. Her face paled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She just stood there staring at me, her eyes wide with fear. How did you find out? She stammered. I read your messages, I said, my voice cold and hard. I know everything. Don't even bother trying to deny it. Tears welled up in her eyes. Torin, I can explain, she said, her voice trembling. Explain what? I demanded. Explain how you could betray me like this. Explain how you could lie to my face and pretend that everything was okay. Explain how you could risk destroying our family for some cheap affair. She started to cry, the tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean for it to happen, she sobbed. It just happened. I was feeling neglected, Torin. You're always working, always online. I felt like you didn't even see me anymore, so that justifies cheating on me, I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. That justifies lying to me and sneaking around behind my back? No, of course not, she said, shaking her head. I know I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I still love you, Torin. I don't want to lose you. Please give me another chance. I stared at her, my heart aching with a mixture of pain and anger. A part of me wanted to believe her, to forgive her, to try and salvage our marriage. But another part of me knew that I could never trust her again. The trust was broken, shattered into a million pieces, and I didn't see how we could ever put it back together. I can't, I said, my voice firm. I can't forgive you, Brynn. I can't trust you. It's over. She sank to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Please, Torin, don't do this, she begged. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll quit my job. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please don't leave me. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of her tears. It's too late, I said. You should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on me. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and bitter arguments. We decided to sell the apartment and split the assets. The kids were devastated, caught in the middle of our messy divorce. I hated putting them through this, but I knew I couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies and betrayal. Brynn moved out, taking only a few of her belongings. The apartment felt empty and cold without her, but I also felt a sense of relief. The weight of her betrayal had been lifted, and I could finally start to breathe again. I focused on my kids, spending as much time with them as possible. We went to movies, played games, and just talked. I wanted them to know that even though their parents were divorcing, they were still loved and supported. I also started seeing a therapist. I needed help processing my emotions, dealing with the pain and anger that Brynn had inflicted on me. Therapy helped me to understand that her actions were not a reflection of my worth, but rather a reflection of her own insecurities and flaws. As the weeks turned into months, I started to heal. The pain didn't disappear completely, but it became more manageable. I started to focus on myself, on my own happiness and well-being. I joined a gym, took up hiking, and reconnected with old friends. I started to feel like myself again, maybe even a better version of myself. One day, about 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a picture of Brynn and Anders standing outside a courthouse. Brynn was heavily pregnant and Anders had his arm around her. The caption read, "Finally married. So happy to start our new life together." I stared at the picture, a wave of emotions washing over me. Anger, sadness, and surprisingly, relief. Relief that I was no longer tied to her, relief that I had escaped her web of lies and deceit. I deleted the picture and blocked the number. I didn't want to see or hear from her again. She had made her choice and I had made mine. We were both free to move on with our lives. A few weeks later, I received a call from Isolde. "Torin," she said, her voice filled with concern. "Have you heard about Brynn?" "No," I said, my heart sinking. "What happened?" "Anders left her," Isolde said. "He ran off with another woman, leaving her pregnant and alone. She's completely devastated." I didn't say anything for a moment, processing the news. A part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction, a sense of karmic justice. But another part of me felt sorry for her. She had made a terrible mistake, and now she was paying the price. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said finally. "But there's nothing I can do. She made her bed and now she has to lie in it. Isolde sighed. I know, she said. I just thought you should know. I thanked her for the call and hung up. I sat there for a long time thinking about Brynn and the choices she had made. I realized that I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt indifferent. She was no longer a part of my life, and I was finally okay with that. I had moved on, I had healed, and I was ready to start a new chapter. A chapter filled with love, trust, and happiness. A chapter that didn't include Brynn. Several years have passed since then. I've met someone new, a wonderful woman named Aoife who loves me for who I am. We're building a life together, a life filled with honesty, respect, and mutual support. The kids adore her, and I couldn't be happier. Brynn, on the other hand, is still struggling. I've heard through the grapevine that she's had a series of failed relationships and is still bitter about the divorce. But I don't dwell on it. I've learned that you can't control other people's choices. You can only control your own reaction to them. I chose to forgive, to heal, and to move on. And that, I believe, is the greatest revenge of all.